Hello, my name is Leonard. This is Symantec Enterprise Vault 10 for Exchange Administration, Lesson 2, Initial Configuration of Enterprise Vault. In this lesson, we're going to do an installation overview, and we're just doing an overview here because what we've done is we've created a separate course that goes into all the details of the installation process that is available for web-based viewing. But we're going to pick up with, once the installation is complete, with running the configuration wizard. So we'll look at going through the processes necessary to do the initial configuration of Enterprise Vault. Installation overview. When you get done with this, you should understand the basic big picture steps that went into doing the installation process. Once again, there is a separate web-based online course that is available for getting all the details about the installation process. So first thing you want to do is pre-installation tasks. These are going to include verifying the hardware requirements, and you want to check the most recent compatibility guide to verify the correct version of the hardware and software. So you need to install and update any required software. You need to create the Vault service account. This needs to be an account that is an Active Directory account that you're going to be using for the installation process. And as part of the configuration and installation, you'll be giving special permissions to this particular account to allow them access in the Enterprise Vault environment. You will create DNS, domain name server aliases, for these particular items. These DNS aliases are very useful for disaster recovery, failover, but also it makes the administration easier if you have these DNS aliases set up in the front. You are going to have to do some configuration that is unique to the Exchange servers themselves, so you need to go through and do any prerequisites. Once again, if you look at the installing and configuring guide, you should be able to find all the prerequisites for installing the Exchange servers. We'll be talking a little bit about the details of that in a later lesson. And then you want to go through and run the Enterprise Vault deployment scanner. That is optional. You do not need to run it as a standalone type of an application. However, it is helpful to make sure that you do have all the prerequisites met prior to actually starting the installation and then having to go back in the middle of the installation to find out that you missed a particular prerequisite. The overview of the installation process itself includes to load the Enterprise Vault CD or whatever the installation media is that you've been supplied with. You want to go to the readme.htm file. This will include any last-minute updates or instructions that you may need to look at before you actually start the setup of the Enterprise Vault or the installation process. Once you've read that and are satisfied that you meet all the requirements and are ready to go, you will go to your installation media. You'll look for a folder named Server, and under Server there'll be a file, setup.exe. You just double-click on the setup.exe and it will run. As part of the setup, we've actually incorporated the deployment scanner into the installation process, so it will automatically run and tell you that you have the prerequisite setup. So that's why you don't have to run it in advance. It is part of the installation process. You need to select the installation location and all the components that which you're trying to install. You also want to select the best practice settings, and that is discussed on the online web-based training that's available. And then you need to install your licenses. Once again, we just kind of wanted to give you a big picture of what we've already done. Now we're ready to actually start where we're going to pick up this particular course at, which is configuring the Enterprise Vault server using the configuration wizard. So the configuration wizard will be available to you based upon which version of software you're installing it on, whether it's Windows Server 2003 or Windows Server 2008. And again, make sure that you do check the compatibility guide for the correct version that supports running Enterprise Vault 10. Once you've selected that, you'll have it under your Enterprise Vault folder. You can see that you will have the Enterprise Vault configuration option, and that's what you'll select to start the Enterprise Vault configuration wizard. You do it after you've run the initial installation. You only need to run it once per server normally. However, you do have the capability of running it a second time. It can help you sometimes do a repair/recovery. We'll discuss that a little bit later in another lesson for backing up and recovering Enterprise Vault. And you want to make sure that when you are using the Enterprise Vault configuration wizard, that you are logged in as the Vault service account. That Vault service account should have local administrators' rights on the local Enterprise Vault server. The Enterprise Vault wizard is responsible for granting additional privileges to the Vault service account. These include the capability of debugging programs. This allows the Enterprise Vault to validate other processes that are running on that particular server. Another additional privilege is the log on as service. This allows the Enterprise Vault service to do tasks to run with the identity as the Enterprise Vault account, and then we place a process level token. This allows different accounts to run various Enterprise Vault tasks using the security token associated with the Vault service account. It also is responsible for creating or connecting to the directory service and the directory database. The reason why we put both creating is that if this is the first installation, you've got to create that initial directory as well as that initial directory database. If you're going through the installation process to add additional servers, or you're going through to add additional Enterprise Vault sites, then you would just connect to the already existing directory, which implies that you're connecting to the existing directory database. You're going to add a new computer alias to the Vault site and or define the Vault site name. Again, if you're creating a new site, you'll specify the Vault site name and a description. If you're just adding additional computers to an existing Vault site, you'll just specify the computer alias for that site. Then you'll go through and specify which Enterprise Vault services you wish to run on the Enterprise Vault server. And then also, again, as I mentioned earlier, this can actually be run as a repair functionality for an existing directory. And again, we'll discuss that option in a later lesson. So the big picture of what we're doing with the Enterprise Vault Configuration Wizard includes creating the Vault directory or joining an existing one, selecting your language and specifying the Vault service account to use, identifying the SQL Server database location. This is both the SQL Server that you're going to use as well as the location of the database files and transaction logs. You'll create the Vault site and define the server alias for the Vault site, add and delete your services, and then verify and complete the configuration process. And now we're going to go through and look at these in a little bit more detail with screenshots for some of the different options. So first is starting the Enterprise Vault Configuration Wizard. When we start the Enterprise Vault Configuration Wizard, the first prompt that it asks you is, do you want to create a new Vault directory on this computer? If you select yes, the assumption is that this is the first directory that you're creating, and you will be creating everything to go into that particular directory. If you select the no option, you got the option of either, again, creating a new Enterprise Vault site and adding it to an existing directory, or you can go ahead and add an additional server to an existing Enterprise Vault site. We're going to make the assumption that this is the initial configuration after an initial installation, so we're going to select yes. Once you've selected the yes to create the new directory, which means it's going to create the new directory database, it then asks you for the language that you wish to use. And by default, currently, we have 3 supported languages: English, Japanese, and simplified Chinese. Once you specify the language that you want to use with the Enterprise Vault Administration Console, we will then go through and specify the specifics associated with the Vault Service account. So you can see here that we're going to give the Vault Service name, which is specified using the domain / username format, and then also the password for the Vault Service account. And it does give you a summary of those actions that I described earlier that is going to give those additional permissions to the Vault Service account. Then it's going to prompt you for the location of the SQL Server. Now, it may prompt you once or twice as you go through the configuration wizard. If the only thing that you're doing is creating the new directory, it will just prompt you once. But if you're also installing the directory as well as the Enterprise Vault Operations Management, you will be prompted a second time for the SQL Server location. We're just going to show you the dialog box once. So it looks exactly the same both times that it prompts you for the actual name of the SQL Server. You do have the option of typing in the name of the SQL Server. You could also click the Browse button, and it will give you a list of all the servers that are running the Microsoft SQL Service that are in your network that are available. It also supports the capability of specifying an instance name. If you are using SQL Server and instances, it will support you typing in the name of the SQL Server / followed by the actual instance name. Now, as you're going through, it will also prompt you for the location of the actual physical database files themselves, as well as the location of the transaction log. This particular dialog box is showing you the prompt for the directory database. Also, in our particular example, we are going to install the Enterprise Vault Operations Manager. We'll be talking about that in detail in a later lesson. But it is prompting me here for the location that I wish to locate the Enterprise Vault Operations or monitoring database, as well as the transaction logs for that monitoring database. And then as a good practice from a SQL standpoint, you typically want to have your database and transaction logs separated out on different spindles/devices to provide you with optimized input-output, because we are going to be doing a lot of communication, a lot of transactions, so you will be communicating with the SQL Server database and transaction logs a lot. Now again, assuming that we are creating our very first site, it'll prompt you for the site name, and we're going to name our site EV Site 1 and a description to help you describe what that particular site does. So in our example, it's just a training site. So we've named it, or we've described it as the EV training site. Then you will go through and specify a alias. This is the DNS or domain name server alias that you've created, and you did this as one of the prerequisites for the installation. You specify that computer alias, and you also specify that you wish to add the domain name, or which domain name, if you have multiple domains, to that particular alias. Now in our example, we only have one domain in our Active Directory infrastructure, that domain being example.com, so therefore that's the only domain that we have selected, but we are going to add that DNS suffix for all searches for the EV server alias. The next thing it's going to prompt you for is which services that you wish to have installed on this particular Enterprise Vault server, in this particular Enterprise Vault site. You can add and remove from the list. The list is showing you the default services that are going to be installed. So these include the Enterprise Vault indexing service, the Enterprise Vault shopping service, the Enterprise Vault storage service, as well as the Enterprise Vault task controller service. We discussed these in the introduction, a basic overview of what each one of the services does, as well as later lessons we will go into detail about what these particular services are doing for us. You do have the option of adding additional services if required. Also, if this particular server in this particular site is not doing everything, for example, you're going to set up an index server group, you could remove the storage service from this particular server. So again, you can add and remove services based upon your infrastructure. And again, we'll get into that concept of the index server group in the indexing lesson later on. Last thing we get to is the completing the configuration dialog box. And at this particular point, we have three different options. One is we can run the Enterprise Vault Getting Started wizard. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail here in just a moment. But this is a wizard to help you do some of the initial configuration settings that we're going to cover in lessons 3 and 4. However, if you do not wish to use the Getting Started wizard, and we'll talk a little bit more about the pros and cons of the Getting Started wizard here in just a moment, you can go ahead and just have it immediately open up the Enterprise Vault administration console for you, and then you can continue on with the configuration actions. And that's what we are ultimately going to do in this particular course in the follow-on lessons. Or the other option is that you are not at this particular point in time ready to complete the installation and configuration of Enterprise Vault, so you tell it just to close the wizard, at which point you can go back later and manually start the Enterprise Vault Getting Started wizard, or you can manually open the Enterprise Vault administration console. Now, if you had selected on the previous slide that you did want to go into the Enterprise Vault Getting Started wizard, it would open up a dialog box and give you a prompt, and you got two different modes that the Enterprise Vault Getting Started wizard runs in. You have the Express mode and the Custom mode. If you do select the Express mode, the idea here is that it's going to automatically create a single provisioning group for the Exchange organization. It's going to create a single site. It's going to create default policies. And the idea here is that this is really kind of good for either a demonstration, a proof of concept, testing, because it gets everything set up fairly quickly so that you can continue on. However, if you wish, you don't have to do it that way. You can select Custom. And if you do select Custom, you can even determine, as you can see with the different option buttons that are available, which particular things you wish to customize, such as the indexing configuration or the storage configuration. Also, you can specify which types of targets that you want to set up for both Express and or Custom. So you can, in fact, use this to do much more detailed configuration if you wish. And when we go through the later lessons, when we show you how to do certain things through the Enterprise Vault Administration Console, we will tell you that you could do the same thing through the Enterprise Vault Getting Started wizard. So we'll kind of link those together. Again, it's just strictly whichever your personal preference is to determine which one you're going to choose. But we have decided for this particular course that we're going to spend most of our time in the Enterprise Vault Administration Console. So we would select the Start Enterprise Vault Administration Console, launch that, and now we're ready to go ahead and continue on with configuring some site settings that need to be configured before we start actually doing the archiving process, as well as setting up something called roles-based administration to determine who's going to be able to administer what inside of Enterprise Vault, and we'll be looking at that in the actual next lesson. So in this particular lesson, we looked at the overall installation steps that are necessary for installing the Enterprise Vault environment. We talked a little bit about how to run the Enterprise Vault configuration wizard, as well as looking at the basics of starting off with the Enterprise Vault Getting Started wizard, as well as the Enterprise Vault Administration Console. Our reference materials include the CD, which is a reminder to look at the README first for some details about additional configuration actions that may be necessary prior to starting the Enterprise Vault mailbox archiving or journaling archiving processes. You also have the Enterprise Vault support site from Symantec, and there's a link to the tech note that references the compatibility list. Again, you want to make sure that you are using the correct hardware and software when you go through your configuration. And then also, you need to plan everything in advance so that as you go through the configuration, you'll know which choices to make. And so you want to go through and make sure you look at the introduction and planning guide to help out with that. And then you have the actual steps and prerequisites themselves, which are in the installing and configuring guide. And then also a reminder, we do have a separate web-based course, which is the Enterprise Vault 10 installation course, which is an e-learning course, which goes through all the details that we gave you the overview of in this particular chapter. And that brings us to the end of lesson number 2.